So, what do you do when you have a lot of jewelry, but you need money like yesterday? Sometimes situations, emergencies, circumstances pop up, and we're in a position that we don't have a lot of time, but we have some jewelry, but we need money fast. That's what we're going to talk about today because I know that things happen sometimes beyond our control, and we need to know what our options are. Now, this is a topic that I actually covered on the podcast a little over a year ago, but I decided to revisit it because I got two messages within the past couple of weeks of people in this exact situation. One of them, she needed money right away, and she was asking, could I help her figure out a way to sell her jewelry quickly? And another one, she was just overwhelmed and she didn't want to deal with it. She just wanted to sell her jewelry as fast as she could. So, if you find yourself in a similar situation, or maybe not, you still want to pay attention to this episode because you never know what could happen. Life is unpredictable. And you want to think about what you could do, what you have at your disposal to make your situation or your emergency less burdensome. Because a lot of us have a lot of jewelry and maybe it's not moving as quickly. Maybe it's not selling for the price that we want. And we're willing to be a little bit flexible in order to make the money fast. That's the topic we're going to cover today. So, hello. My name is Desiree, and you know that I am your jewelry reselling bestie. So, one of the things that I know as a jewelry reseller, or just as a reseller in general, you're always sitting on inventory. And you know that I have told you guys many times that when I see piles of inventory, especially unlisted inventory, to me, my mind sees that literally as money sitting there, money that I cannot access, money that is not even really working for me if it's not listed or if it's not somewhere available for someone who may want to buy it. All right. So today we're not going to really focus on building a long-term reselling business, but we are going to focus on some short-term solutions if you need money immediately. Because, like I said, life can be unpredictable, emergencies happen, situations happen that we have no control over. And you really need to be aware of what your options are and maybe what some of the things you will want to be flexible on or maybe negotiate on. And also, protecting yourself in a vulnerable situation because sometimes, you are really vulnerable if you are in a desperate situation and you need money. Okay, so before we get into that, I like to always remind you to make sure you check out our website, jewelryresellerspodcast.com, because over there you can opt in to our weekly newsletter. And I also want to invite you to my brand new educational community. It's called Jewelry Jumpstart. And part of that whole community space will include a 4-week Jewelry Jumpstart intensive. So if you are wanting literal handholding to launch or start or maybe grow your jewelry reselling business, our next 4-week intensive kicks off in January. So if you're interested, and checking that out, it might be helpful to you. I've also got a lot of mini courses in there and all kinds of stuff that I think is educational and will help you as a jewelry reseller. So you can find that, all of the information at jewelryjumpstart.com. All right, so let's go ahead and move in today's topic. Like I said, today it's going to be about how do we operate in emergency mode. If you've got bills due, unexpected expenses, or a situation where you need cash quickly, and the only thing of real value you have could be your jewelry inventory. I've been there more than once. As a matter of fact, that's kind of how I got started in jewelry reselling because I had a lot of jewelry and I was selling on eBay, and then I realized I could actually sell this jewelry on eBay and make really good money. All right, so my goal in this episode really is simple. It's to give you some realistic options, be honest about some of the trade-offs that you will encounter when you are trying to sell your jewelry fast, and also to help you make this decision um, you know, as easy as you possibly can. Now, I know if you're in a dire situation, it's not necessarily easy, but we're going to try to make this not as scary as it potentially could be. All right, so let's go ahead and start with, before we get into all the details, one of the things that you are going to have to accept right off the bat, if you need money fast, you're not going to get the full value of your jewelry. All right, the faster you need the money, the less you're going to get for the jewelry. So just go ahead and keep that in mind. If you are in a situation where you need, money fast, because that's going to be the big trade-off, is that you're not going to get full value for the jewelry. But sometimes you're in a situation where you don't care, or you can't care because the need is so great. All right, because if you had time to research, find the perfect buyer, list it on multiple platforms, or wait weeks, months, or even years to get top dollar for it, you could get more. For certain situations, you don't have that luxury. All right. So sometimes you have to trade profit for relief, or you're trading the money for, solving a situation. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, make sure you're clear. Are you trying to get maximum value, or do you need money in 48 hours, or do you need money in a week? Whatever the case is. Understand that there is a trade-off, and in some cases it may be worth it. So, option number one, if you need to sell your jewelry quickly and you need money fast, we all know this, it's pawn shops. Yeah, this is the obvious answer, and you are going to get lowball or offers as it relates to this, but sometimes it's the best move. It's the easiest, when you're in a crisis situation, and a lot of times it's the safest, because you go in a pawn shop, you know that no one's going to hopefully attack you, or try and rob you or anything like that. So some of the pros of dealing with pawn shops is that you walk out with cash the same day. You don't have to list, ship, or wait for the money. And in most cities, there is at least one pawn shop somewhere around, that's accessible to you. Now, the cons of selling your jewelry at a pawn shop is that you're not going to get full value, not even close. All right. But remember, we already are going into this knowing that. And a lot of pawn shops, they care more about the metal or the scrap value of the jewelry. They don't care about the design. They don't care about the era. They don't care about any type of sentimental stuff. They just want to know, what is the meltdown value, or what is the scrap value of that piece. Pawn shops are about speed. They're not about fairness. So if you need money today, that's the trade-off that you're going to make. Option two is a local jewelry store. Now, some jewelry stores do buy back jewelry, especially if you bought the jewelry from there. Now, of course, they're not going to give you what you paid for it, whatever the full retail price was, but some jewelry stores do buy back jewelry, especially old gold, diamonds, estate jewelry, certain designer pieces even. All right. They may pay better than a pawn shop, especially for higher value items. So the pros of selling your jewelry to a jewelry shop: you're going to be dealing with professionals who do understand jewelry, and you might get a slightly better offer than you would dealing with a pawn shop. The cons of selling your jewelry at a jewelry store is they're still buying at resale, wholesale, not the retail price. And they may not be interested in every piece. They just won't. They are looking for something that they can sell, or maybe even something that they can make down or melt down or repurpose into other jewelry. So this is a good option if you have solid gold or diamond pieces, or even nicer, higher end estate jewelry. All right, option number three, if you need to sell your jewelry fast because you need the money: gold buyers and scrap metal dealers. Now, here in Las Vegas, we have a lot of those cash for gold little places. here, probably because this is a gambling town. But if the jewelry is broken, but if it's still made out of 14 karat, 18 karat, whatever, you definitely can sell it at the We Buy Gold places, all right? Or stuff that's outdated, just not wearable, or maybe you just don't care and you just don't want it. All right, now here, these places, you are selling it to them for the scrap or the melt value. And sometimes this is the fastest, easiest way to go. Now, when I was in a bind, this is exactly what I did. I went to a We Buy Gold place and I sold quite a bit of gold jewelry there. Now, at the time, I got pretty decent money, but when I think back, that tells me that the pieces were probably worth way more than what I got for them. But I was in a situation where I needed money like yesterday. I was a single mom with a little one. And so I had to do what I had to do. So I know I've been there. I know what this feels like to need money and not have a whole lot of viable options. All right. So at the We Buy Gold place, they care about weight, the carat, and the current metal price, whatever gold or silver or whatever the metal is trading at. They usually don't care about brand, design, or stones. All right. So they don't care. They'll throw them away, whatever they do. So the pros of this is that it's fast and simple. And if you find a really good place, they will weigh the gold in front of you so you can see exactly, how much gold it is. And it is easy, they make it very easy for you to go in there. And of course they do, because they want you to bring your gold in. So it's not intimidating, it's not scary. A lot of these types of places are in strip malls, so they're pretty safe. If you went in there by yourself, I wouldn't worry too much, because I actually went in by myself and I didn't have an issue at all. All right. And you don't have to sell anything. If they give you a price and you don't like it, you can totally walk out. No big deal. Now, the cons of these We Buy Gold places is they're paying you for the metal content only, and any type of sentimental value to the piece they don't care about, and you're not gonna, they just don't care. They just want whatever they can get so they can melt it down and scrap it. All right, so next up is consignment shops. All right, now some consignment shops will buy your jewelry outright. There is a place here in Vegas, I don't know if they're open anymore, but they sell like high-end designer clothing and shoes, handbags, all of that stuff. And they will make a deal with you right there on the spot. Now, I know not every city has this, but if you do have this, if you live in a larger city, this could be a way for you to get some money for your jewelry. And these places, consignment shops, are interested in the costume jewelry pieces, the more stylish, trendy designer pieces that may not necessarily be, gold, silver, platinum, or whatever. All right. But again, I know not everybody has this in their city. But the nice thing, some of the pros about this is that you can get same day cash if they buy on the spot. Some of them do. And even if they don't, I still would ask, I would say, hey, would you be willing to make a deal and just buy these pieces from me outright? They understand fashion and jewelry, so they will be interested in some of those designer costume, maybe older vintage costume jewelry pieces. And it's better for trendy or designer costume jewelry, that they just don't make anymore, right? Like they definitely will be interested in that. The cons is that not every city has this, like I said, and they will pay you far below what they plan to resell the piece for. But like I said, if you need the money, sometimes that's okay. And the consignment shops, the other con too, is they tend to be very picky, right? So you may go in there with 20 pieces and they might be only interested in 3 or 4. So again, it's an option if you need money fast. Now, here's one that I actually just learned about when I was researching this episode, and that is online jewelry buyers. This is something that a lot of people don't know exists. I know I didn't know. And these are companies that specialize in buying fine jewelry. All right. They give you a quote based on your description and your photos. And then they send you a prepaid insured label so you can send them the piece. They will evaluate the piece once they receive it, and then they will make you a final offer. All right, now sometimes some of these places will even give you loans against your jewelry, which I thought was really interesting. So let's say you don't want to sell the piece, but you want to take out a loan against it and use the jewelry as collateral, you totally could do that. All right, so this is built specifically for jewelry, these types of services. They can pay better than local buyers for higher value pieces. It's a much more professional process. But again, this does take a little time. So this is one of the cons. It's like it's not same day cash if that's what you need. You do have to ship your jewelry out, which could be a little bit scary. So make sure that you are doing your due diligence when you are researching some of these online jewelry buyer websites or companies. And you need to be comfortable with the process and the company. So, like I said, you really want to do your research. But there are some really good, reputable ones out there. So, it's worth your time to do the research. If you've got time to, say you need jewelry or say you need your money in like a few weeks, this could work. Um, but it's not going to work if you need money like tomorrow. All right. But if you have something that's truly valuable and if you can wait, like I said, a few days, a few weeks, this could definitely be a really solid option. All right. My next option is direct sales to people you know. Now, there could be people in your circle, in your family, in your friends, in your associates, acquaintances, whatever, who would be willing to buy your jewelry. Now, the thing is, I know a lot of us don't necessarily want to put our business out there when we need money, when we desperately need money. I know I don't, but you may be able to just put the word out and not go into a whole lot of detail about what you're doing or why you need the money or why you need to sell your jewelry. But you'd be surprised that people even at the acquaintance level, would be more than willing to buy your jewelry. All right. Like I get people reaching out to me, like I said, who are in desperate situations wanting to sell their jewelry. And these are people I don't even know. And that might be easier because they don't know me. So they don't feel like they have to, share their personal life or something like that. But it could be a little awkward and uncomfortable, especially with family, if you're trying to see if you can sell some pieces to your cousin or uncle or whatever the case may be. But if you're in a desperate situation, it's worth a try because you never know. You might be pleasantly surprised, and you may have a family member who will even loan you the money, right? So you never know. The pros of this, it can be really quick. You can set your own price and you don't have to deal with any fees, right? You don't have to pay a listing fee or anything like that. And if it's somebody local to you, you don't even have to worry about shipping. The cons of this is you may not want people to know your personal business. Like I said, not everybody has buyers or people who can afford to buy your jewelry in their personal circle. And the other thing is you might feel pressured because it is somebody you know to, be cheap or to give a discount. So I think that could be something you got to be careful with because, sometimes people, and they think they're doing you a favor and they'll say, well, I'm doing you a favor. You can at least cut me a deal because I've dealt with that too. So that's going to have to be your call. But again, if you're in a desperate situation, that might be totally fine. All right. I don't know what number we're on. But my next option here is social media and live selling. All right, live selling you can make money fast. You really can. I've made money within a few minutes to a few hours selling some jewelry on Facebook. All right, you really can make money that quickly, especially if you're selling something that is highly desirable, something that people want. You can do a live sale here on YouTube or Instagram or something like that. I'm not talking about the live selling platforms because it'll take a while for you to get that money, depending on what platform you're on. But if you did a live sale on your own YouTube channel or Facebook page, you can get the money instantly, right? And you don't have to be a full-time live seller in order to do this. If you have a small audience or a few friends or followers who already know that you sell jewelry, or maybe even if they don't, you might just want to try it. I mean, that's probably what I would do. I would put the word out on my social medias and say, hey, is anybody interested? I'm selling a bunch of jewelry. It all has to go, whatever you say, and people will be interested. People will reach out. Um, Now, some of the pros of this: no platform selling fees. You control the price. It can be fast if people are engaged. Like I said, I've made money within a few minutes to a few hours selling on Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are buy, sell, trade groups, and some of them you do have to pay to post what you have for sale. A lot of them are free, and some of them are specific Facebook groups for a certain type of jewelry. Like vintage jewelry, jewelry lots, whatever the case may be. So look for a group that you can literally list your stuff and hopefully get buyers within, a few minutes to a few days. Now, the cons of this: if you are going to sell on social media, you do need some kind of an audience. It doesn't have to be thousands upon thousands, but you do need somebody, to see what you got. And you have to be comfortable doing the whole entire process yourself, sending out a PayPal invoice, also shipping, printing your own shipping labels and all of that. I've done a video on how to sell jewelry on social media. So I will link that in a card in case you are interested. All right. So let me make sure I write it down so I don't forget. All right. So this can work surprisingly well, especially if you are willing to go live every single day. Like, that is probably what I would do. I wouldn't do the pawn shops. I wouldn't try and sell my jewelry to a jewelry store. If I were in a desperate situation, I would totally just go live every single day until I sold the jewelry and made the money. Like, that's probably what I would do. Okay. My last option, I think, here is online marketplaces when you have a few days. All right. Like Facebook Marketplace, of course, eBay. But sometimes eBay, depending on what it is, it may not give you a quick turnaround. They're not instant cash solutions, but if you've got like a few weeks, you may want to throw it up there and see if something bites. All right. But for a true emergency, those are going to be too slow. But if you've got a few days or few weeks, you may want to run an auction, a 3-day auction, a 5-day auction, or something like that. See if you get anything. You could also list the piece, and hope it sells. But again, this is probably not the fastest way, but we all have had things sell quickly, right? Where we've listed something. Maybe we underpriced it, or maybe it was just so rare that it ended up selling within a day or two. So that could happen, right? So I would probably do this in addition to one of the other options that we talked about. I wouldn't just throw it up on eBay and hope somebody buys it like tomorrow. But it could work. It could work. And it's always an option. And I know a lot of us already know that. All right, so how can you get the best possible deal when you are trying to sell your jewelry quickly? Well, number one, you want to know what your jewelry is worth. Understand you're probably not going to get that amount, but at least you know what it's worth, so you can really communicate and position the deal as, you know that somebody is getting lucky with this. You know that you're giving somebody an amazing deal. All right. So you don't want to walk in there completely blind, but you do want to have a solid idea of what your jewelry is worth. Now, you also want to prepare your jewelry if you want to clean it, polish it, whatever. Again, it depends on which one of the options we talked about that you are going to try and sell your jewelry. It may or may not be necessary. And then again, be realistic about the trade-off. All right. So just because a ring is worth $1,000, it doesn't mean that you're going to get $1,000. And it may not mean you're going to get $800 or $700. You may only get 400, 500, right? And in some cases, maybe not even that. So understand that You may not like it, but because you're in a situation, you may have to take what's available. All right. Now, I don't recommend this, but when the situation calls for it, sometimes we got to do what we got to do. And then finally, stay safe. All right. If you are meeting with strangers, a lot of police stations will allow you to meet there to handle the transaction, especially if you've got high end jewelry that you're dealing with, or somebody is paying you in cash, or if you don't know if the person is safe, whatever the case may be. That's probably what I would do. I would meet in a police station parking lot, or maybe inside the lobby if that's allowed. Whatever you have to do to be safe, okay? Make sure that you are meeting in a public place. I know some banks also allow you to meet there too. You can meet in the bank lobby. That's another option if a police station is not nearby. But never meet anybody at your house. Never go to anybody's house. I know we know this, but I want to make sure I put it out there because I want you to be safe. It's already bad enough that you're, potentially losing money by selling your jewelry for less than what it's valued at. So we don't want to have any other issues, in addition to that, safety issues specifically. All right. And lastly, if you've got the time, I recommend going to multiple places. Like if you're going to do the pawn shop thing, go to 2 or 3 different pawn shops if you can. If there are 2 pawn shops in your area, it's worth a drive to see which one is going to give you the better offer. And that they're not going anywhere. They're going to be there. So if you go to one, you don't like it, you go to another one, it's even worse. You can always go back to the first one. All right. So make sure that you give yourself every potential opportunity to get the most money that you can, even in a desperate situation. All right. So I really hope that, none of us have to be in this situation, but because recently 2 people reached out to me asking about this, I thought I would do an updated episode in case somebody else, we are kind of moving into the holiday season, and you never know. You never know. You might find yourself unexpectedly having to get money quickly and having to liquidate your jewelry. So this episode hopefully gave you some things to think about, and um, realize that you are trading money for speed, for relief, and for solving your problem today or as quickly as possible. And I know it's not always fun, but like I said, sometimes that's just the reality of life. All right. So that is going to be it for this episode, jewelry friends. If you have anything to add to this topic, I would love to read your comments. I read and respond to every comment. And have you been in this situation? If you're willing to share, what worked for you? What advice would you give to somebody who needed money fast and they are willing to sell their jewelry in order to solve a problem or pay a bill or whatever? All right. I would love to hear your input and get your feedback on this because I know what it's like. It's very lonely and it's very scary, but you don't have to feel like you don't know what you're doing. Right? That was the whole point of this episode, is to give you the information. So if you have to make these decisions, you are informed, right? You are informed. Okay. So that's going to be it, jewelry friends. I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I will check in with you again really soon.